Vladimir Zelensky says fighting in Soledar continues. The Ukrainian president dismissing claims Russia's Wagner Group controls the area. Satellite imagery shows the destruction in Soledar before and after the intense fighting. Now, Soledar is located around 15 kilometers from the city of Bakhmut, which has become the focus of fighting in recent weeks. Brian Quinn reports.
On the outskirts of Soledar, Ukrainian artillery hammers enemy positions. From the skies above it, Russian fighter jets launch their own strikes. Ukraine says its forces are still holding out in the town, calling it the bloodiest battle of the war so far.
Despite the difficult situation, Ukrainian soldiers are fighting fiercely. The enemy, trying unsuccessfully to break through our defense and capture Soledar, is suffering heavy losses. The approaches to the city today are dotted with the bodies of killed Putin troops.
A salt mining center once home to around 10,000 residents, Soledar lies in the eastern Donbas region of Ukraine, just 15 kilometers from the heavily contested city of Bakhmut. It's become the scene not just of brutal combat, but also of competing influence between regular Russian forces and the Wagner Group. Earlier this week, the mercenary militia initially claimed to have captured Soledar. The Russian army, though, says fighting is ongoing. From above, the war's devastating effects on the town are unmistakable, with scenes of near total destruction. Despite Soledar having little strategic value, Moscow has made the battle a priority, desperate for a victory after a series of setbacks. Counteroffensives have seen Ukraine retake some 40% of the territory initially seized when Russia launched its invasion nearly 11 months ago.
We can now bring in Sergei Sumleny, a Berlin-based Ukraine expert who joins us from Poland. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24. You were recently on the front lines in Ukraine. Where were you and what was the situation like?
Hi, and thank you for having invited me today. I'm sitting now in the airport of Krakow, returning from Donbas to Berlin, so that's why the background. Well, I've been not exactly on the front line, but 30 kilometers from the front line, because the front line itself is of course closed for all unauthorized personnel because it's a secured area. I've been to Izium, the city which is just 30 kilometers from the front line, close to Liman, where the fightings are ongoing. And the city itself was liberated from the Russian occupation 3 months ago. It was under the Russian occupation for 6 months, and the city is in devastating condition. One can say the city doesn't exist anymore. There is no house intact. Most houses are completely destroyed, and some houses are damaged, so almost no people remain there. And that is what Ukrainian cities which are under the Russian occupation suffer, completely destruction.
In recent weeks, there's been a focus on Bakhmut. In recent days, there's been a focus on Soledar. Why are these strategic for Moscow?
Well, Moscow first urgently needs any victory. They have presented only the defeats up to now. They have lost the regional capital Kherson, extremely important for the Russians. They have lost territories in Kharkiv region and other regions, so they desperately need some success in Ukraine. And even some small names like Bakhmut or Soledar could boost the morale of their troops and their population. That's why they need it. Despite of that, Soledar is located on the north from Bakhmut, and if the Russians take Soledar, they can start the encirclement of Bakhmut, which could be identified as a tactical success for the Russians.
Talk us through the role of the Wagner Group, the Russian mercenary group.
Well, the Wagner Group is de facto a part of the Russian army. They are under command of the GRU, of Russian military intelligence directorate. But they are also under the strong influence of the warlord Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is the businessman close to Vladimir Putin and the founder of Wagner Group. So that is why it is important that there is a rivalry between the Wagner Group and Prigozhin, I repeat, a Putin-close businessman, and the military. And we know that Prigozhin since months tries to claim that military commanders are incapable and stupid and cannot achieve victory, but his Wagner mercenaries are brave and professional, and he, Evgeny Prigozhin, can achieve the victory. That is why, for example, Prigozhin claimed that he has allegedly captured Soledar, but the military commander, the press speaker of the Russian military defense, the Russian Defense Ministry, Konashenkov, says no, he's lying, like it didn't happen. So we can face a rivalry between Wagner mercenaries and the Russian army. And that is a very interesting constellation in the dogfight among the Russian elites.
Because it seems like a catch-22 situation, because Russia itself has created the Wagner Group, and at the same time, it needs the Wagner Group to fight in Ukraine, but at the same time, it wants to tell them, look, we are the ones calling the shots, not you.
Well, like the Wagner Group itself has undergone like massive development since the last years. First, it was a real elite group of former Russian military personnel, like former airborne troopers, former like special force operatives, who were recruited by this quasi-private but de facto state-owned structure.
But Sergey, where are they getting their servicemen from? Because I read one report that U.S.-trained Afghan commanders are joining the Wagner Group because they're so desperate.
I don't think it's true that they have like foreign personnel or a big amount of foreign personnel. Like first, as I told you, they had only former elite soldiers from the Russian army, but now they recruit almost anybody. They recruit inmates in the prisons. They recruit like jobless people all over Russia because they need grinder meat. They need cannon fodder. And that is a great change in the structure of Wagner, because 2 years ago it was an elite group within the Russian army under no law, like under no legal restrictions. And now they send them to death in dozens around Bakhmut because this personnel is not that expensive anymore.
The United States has announced it will be training Ukrainian troops on how to use its Patriot missile systems in the United States. France will be providing tanks. The UK is mulling a similar move. Has the nature of the West's assistance to Ukraine started to shift?
Well, Ukrainians are absolutely happy on what is happening now with the tanks and with the support from Poland, before with the light tanks from France, and now like Britain promises some weapons, Canada promises some weapons. So there is indeed a huge change, a huge shift. Like what is important, but Ukraine needs heavy weapons. When we speak about like artillery system HIMARS, the US has delivered only 20 of these high precision artillery systems, and Ukraine needs much more. But even these 20 systems have changed the situation on the ground. So now Ukrainians, they expect to get like the tanks, the Leopard 2 tanks from Germany, or Patriot anti-air missile systems and other equipment, because the front line is enormous. Like the front line itself is about 1,000 kilometers, and the potential front line is another 2,000 kilometers. And all this territory must be guarded from the possible Russian attack. We don't know what will happen in the north, if the Russians will try to attack once again for Belarus. We don't know if they will try to launch an attack via Kharkiv. And Ukraine needs to have troops and good equipped troops there. So weapons are crucial to finish this war as soon as possible.
Very briefly, I know you said that the Russians are desperate for any victory they can get, even small towns like Soledar. But the 1-year anniversary of the invasion is approaching. Do you think Moscow could make a push to take all of Ukraine again?
Well, it is what they desperately need, but I don't believe they can do it. They can try, but they will not be successful.